Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. President Biden says he's ready to go big on COVID relief, even if that means no Republican support in the Congress. He argues he's not willing to get bogged down in a lengthy negotiation when Americans are hurting and there's urgency. Joining me now to respond is Republican Senator Pat Toomey from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Senator, good to have you as always. You just heard Secretary Yellen make her case for why almost $2 trillion in coronavirus relief is necessary. You disagree. Why is she wrong?
Well, there are an awful lot of reasons, Jake, and let's remember, I have a lot of respect for Secretary Yellen. She's a very, very capable, talented person, but she is not the leader of the independent Federal Reserve anymore. She is now the Treasury Secretary, and as such, her job is to be the biggest cheerleader for whatever economic policy President Biden wants. The problem with this is, Jake, 42 days ago, we passed the fifth huge bill, another $1 trillion, bringing the total to over $4 trillion. Much of that money, huge amount of that money, is not even out the door yet. Much of it was way too broad and not sufficiently targeted as it was. All of these bills were passed with big bipartisan votes. The biggest of them, the CARES Act from March, over $2 trillion, not a single no vote in the entire Senate. So here we are. The economy has come roaring back. The unemployment rate is less than half what it was. Disposable income is at record highs. Savings rates are at record highs. And where we have problems is very concentrated, Jake. It's not an economy in collapse the way it was in March. Today, we have serious problems for workers in the restaurant, the hospitality, the travel and entertainment sectors. That's really a handful of places, and if those folks have fallen through the cracks of the trillions of dollars we've already spent that's been meant to help them, then let's have a conversation about how to help those folks. But nobody's making that case. What you hear is these broad generalities about, well, people are suffering, so let's spend another $2 trillion. It's not the right solution. Larry Summers is a liberal Democrat who's a Keynesian in favor of big government spending, and he's said this is way too much. So there's a lot of reasons. We could go through line by line.
Right. But let me ask,
much money has already been allocated for these things.
So let me ask you, you talk about how the economy has improved, and the economy is improved, but the U.S. is still down almost 10 million jobs since the pandemic began a year ago. Job growth is crawling. Right. We just got the jobs report, only 49,000 jobs added in January. That's really bad, with 400,000 Americans taking themselves out of even looking for jobs. 24 million Americans don't have enough to eat. The CBO says it's going to take until 2024 to fully recover without sizable relief. How do you explain your opposition given those facts about millions of struggling Americans?
So all of those things, we've allocated money for these purposes. And by the way, CBO is projecting that we'll have almost 5% growth next year if we don't do an additional bill. We have tens of billions of dollars that hasn't made it out the door yet because the ink's hardly dry on the last bill. So this is just what this is it's clear, in addition to the very hard left executive orders, it's clear, unfortunately, from my point of view, that while President Biden has given some great speeches about unity, he's governing from the hard left. This is a list of liberal Democrat wish list for massive spending and don't let a crisis go to waste. People remember that we did have an economic crisis, and so try to load up as much spending as possible, irrespective of the need. By the way, how do you know that? 10 Republican senators marched down to the White House and offered to do another bill. I don't agree with them. But they've put over $600 billion on the table that they're willing to vote for and willing to probably negotiate for more. That's enough to pass it in the Senate, and still the Democrats are saying, nope, it's our way or the highway, and they have passed legislation that will allow them to do a multi-trillion-dollar bill with strictly partisan votes. It's really unfortunate.
But just for the record, you oppose that $600 billion proposal from the 10 Republican
Correct.
senators.
Absolutely.
But
I oppose it. My point is, if you're President Biden and you're serious about having a bipartisan working together with people on the other side, bringing people together in unity, he has the opportunity to do it. It's true. I don't support that because I think it's completely inappropriate, but there are more than 10 Republican senators that disagree with me and that would do this, and yet they appear to be intent on ignoring Republicans.
So President Biden, as you note, has signaled that he's moving forward on his plan with or without Republican support. This is what he had to say.
Right.
I'd like to be doing it with the support of Republicans. But if I have to choose between getting help right now to Americans who are hurting so badly and getting bogged down in a lengthy negotiation, or compromising on a bill that's up to the crisis, that's an easy choice.
That sentiment actually sounds a little bit like what you said when you wanted to pass a bill that you supported with only 51 votes after Republicans won in 2016. Take a listen.
I am hoping that our Democratic colleagues will work with us so that we can begin to make the constructive changes that we need. But if not, I think we should use all tools available to get this job done.
So how is what he's doing any different from what you said?
Because I was talking about tax reform in the context of all but 3 Democrat senators sending us a letter basically refusing to participate in the tax reform that we wanted to do. President Biden doesn't face that at all. We've done 5 bills with Republican support, overwhelming, almost unanimous Republican support. And President Biden has at least 10 Republican senators, which is all he needs, to do yet another bipartisan bill, and he's refusing. So these are very dissimilar, Jake. I think it's also worth looking at some of the particulars. The president has insisted that it's got to have $350 billion for state and local governments. As I think you know, in 2020, state and local governments set an all-time record for revenues collected. They beat the previous record, which was 2019. And that does not include the $500 billion that we sent them over the course of last year. Now, on top of that, we're supposed to send yet another $350 billion. And then there's the unemployment benefits. President Biden is insisting that we increase unemployment benefits to the point where more than half of everyone who's unemployed will be getting paid more not to work than they make working.
Right.
How does that make any sense?
According to a that's according to a University of Chicago study from last year. Right?
Correct.
Let me just ask you in the few minutes we have left, because there are other topics. Just days after the Capitol riot, you came on the show. You said that President Trump committed impeachable offenses. He should resign. He could even face criminal liability. Some of your colleagues have already said that he should be acquitted in the Senate trial that begins on Tuesday. You told me there should be accountability for President Trump. Are you going to vote to hold him accountable?
Well, so I stand by everything I've said, Jake. I still think the best outcome would have been for the president to resign. Obviously, he chose not to do that. Now, starting Tuesday, I'm going to be a juror, and my job is going to be to objectively evaluate the very specific article of impeachment that is going to be presented to us, has been presented to us, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to listen to the arguments on both sides and make the decision that I think is right.
You're one of only 5 Republican senators who didn't vote to dismiss the trial outright as unconstitutional. Do you think there's any chance at all that 67 senators will vote to convict President Trump in his impeachment trial, or is this over before it even begins?
I think it's very unlikely, right? I mean, you did have 45 Republican senators vote to suggest that they didn't think it was appropriate to conduct a trial. So you can infer how likely it is that those folks will vote to convict. I disagreed with their assessment. I think it is constitutional. I think it's clearly constitutional to conduct a Senate trial with respect to an impeachment. In this case, the impeachment occurred prior to the president's leaving office. But, my job is going to be to listen to both sides of this, evaluate the arguments, and make a decision.
As you know, sir, there's a struggle in the Republican Party, especially it's especially pronounced in the House, between the wing that represents conservative people of principle, such as yourself or Liz Cheney, and then the wing that represents lies and conspiracy theories. Only 11 Republicans in the House voted to strip Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committee assignments due to her violent, inflammatory, bigoted, and frankly insane comments she's made in recent years. Are you glad she's off those committees, that Democrats voted that way? Is there a place for the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world in the future of the Republican Party?
There should be no place in the Republican Party for people who believe in insane conspiracy theories like QAnon. That is madness. That has nothing to do with conservatism, has nothing to do with the Republican Party. I think the really encouraging thing from last week was the fact that Liz Cheney a terrific, capable leader who voted based on her conscience. She held on to her leadership post by a margin of more than 2-1 among Republican House members casting secret ballots. They could have voted any way they felt right, and they maintained her role in her leadership place. That's how you begin to keep this party united and together and think about how we move on in the post-Trump era. I was really encouraged to see that vote in the House.
Well, that's a very glasses half full way of looking at it. I mean, 61 Republicans voted to strip Liz Cheney, to punish Liz Cheney, but only 11 Republicans voted to punish Marjorie Taylor Greene. But I appreciate your sunny disposition. I mean, it's a nice way of looking at it.
You don't get into this line of work if you're not an optimist, Jake. But I do think that we'll be able to pull the party together. The madness of the QAnons of this world, that's not going to be part of our party, and we're going to be a big, strong, diverse party. I'm very optimistic.
Well, I hope you're right, sir. Good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate it as always. President Biden is saying